Got serious devotion, and you serious
Welcome
right.
to this episode of Mazecast. As we discussed last time, we're going to be going back to the beginning, back
Back.
to room one. Uh, I don't know if this is a special treat or an undeserved punishment, but it's just going to be Greg and I here this week. I think it's going to be great. I think we're going to have a great time.
Yeah. Yep. It's the two of us together with you. You
Yeah.
can picture it like we're at a cafe somewhere in Paris, and Vin and I were already sitting chatting for a while, and you just walked up and we're like, "Hey, come join us. What brought you to Paris?" And then you can tell us about that, and we'll tell you about our travels, how we went hiking in Sweden, and go from there. It'll be great.
We can pause and give them a few minutes to imagine that and set the scene if you want.
Okay.
Just okay. Uh, room one.
Room
Room
one.
room one's a really interesting room. It's a good room. It's a room we take for granted because everyone. It's the anagrammed words above the doors is such a. I don't want to say it's an easy solution because it's really not the easiest solution in the world. It's just by May's terms, it's kind of an easy one. It's one that people can actually get, and it's one that.
It's been circulating for a while.
Yeah, but even apart from people who've read it, just when new people come to the book, it's something that people do figure out on their own,
Uh-huh.
which puts it in a pretty small subclass of maze puzzles. And it's
Right.
also something that's there's not a lot of debate over whether it's intentional, I don't think, as opposed to a lot of other stuff. But people tend to stop there. They find that that's the solution. Okay, we're done with room one. But there's actually a lot of stuff going on in room one. So I think it's probably a good idea to just point out the kind of stuff we see here. That people can think about the kind of things that they see in room one. Maybe you can help them look for similar things or help convince people that tiny details do matter in other places as well.
Right. Well, and I
Um,
think a lot of the people, like in our tribe of maze goers, have kind of stopped there as well. And I think there's more to maze one than just that anagram puzzle, as evidenced by the fact that there's more stuff there, right?
mhm.
Um, so let's dive in to room
Let's go
one.
for it. You're the man today, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna give the introduction. So in room one, um, we see four doors, each with different items on there. One has an apple, another has a bottle, another has a cup, another has a drum. A, B, C, D. If you want to go by the first letters of those. Above those doors are the words story, fable, tale, and yarn. There's also a bunch of paper on the floor, an easel, and the paper has kind of like pseudo writing on it, or symbols. Uh,
Mhm.
some things that kind of look like letters, but aren't quite letters. Except for the G, looks like there's a G, maybe a D or an O there, some number type things. The text. Uh,
Oh
I
my
think.
God, Greg,
Oh
sorry,
yeah.
I just thought of something.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, maybe, I don't know whether this is something or not, but it just hit me. You're
Oh, do
talking
it.
about there are letters on there, um, and of course, obviously, there's the sign by the front door that says "like" written on there, which is part of the riddle of the path.
Yeah.
It's the first word, like. Okay, but it's written backwards,
Uh huh.
and that just made me think about the letters on the doors that go A B C D backwards. As it,
Oh right.
so maybe that's what that's in reference to. That's those A B C D are in reverse order instead of going. They go D C B A instead of A B C D in
Right.
reference to backwards letters.
So you're supposed to read light backwards as well.
Yes. It's
That
it's
could
another one of these clues that it's more difficult to find the clue than to find the solution it's cluing towards.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
legit. I think that's the reason why they've got A, B, C, D going in reverse order. It's backwards letters.
That makes sense to me. And that's one of the things, the letters on the door, well, the lettered objects on the door is one thing that hasn't really been explained, I don't think, to anyone's satisfaction. So that's great to find a purpose for that. Good job. Well, I think we pretty much summed up room one. We're all done. No, so the text has a bit about the sun. It has the sinister thing, which I think is important. We'll talk about that. There's a thing about this could be a sinister place. The sun glared at me through the doorway. And then there's the bit about the ringing behind one of the doors. And I think kind of the crux of the whole textual element to this puzzle is the silences of the maze are as eloquent as the sounds. Then there's the text after that kind of has the anagrammed words. And that's pretty much it. Beyond that, room one has clues on the back of the book to room one. The back of the book is kind of walking you through room one a little bit, and it says stories in the text. Maybe that says you should go into room 20, which is what story is the book. And I want to delve into that in a little bit. That's basically what we're seeing there. The main kind of like canon solution is that you have the story, the fable, the tale, and the yarn above the doors. Story is in the text, as is mentioned on the back of the book. And then tale and yarn are both anagrammed in the text, leaving fable, which doesn't have any anagramness in the text.
Mm-hmm.
That concludes my overview of room one.
Oh, wait a minute. That doesn't conclude your overview of room one.
It does.
But there's so much more.
There is. I have some, but the other stuff I could go into is maybe more controversial. So I thought we'd go into that in a second segment.
Okay. I guess only place we're not agreeing is on what we're considering the overview. So okay, you're done with the overview.
Yeah.
Now we'll take the room apart.
Yeah, let's take the room apart. So could I give kind of my interpretation of the room, and then
yes.
You can argue with me if you want? Okay, so I think there's kind of two things happening in the room. One is the whole thing with the silences, and the other is sort of a double cluing to both story and fable. Okay? Story and fable are room 20 and 26. 26 is the proper door, but 20 will get you onto the path, but just kind of not the quickest way on the path. So the first part of that is, I guess I'll go with the line about this can be a sinister place. The sun glared at me through the gateway. So the sun, those are both in the same paragraph, which I feel makes them connected somehow. So the sunlight is shining on 4121. Glaring is a negative thing. Okay, so that kind of cancels out those two in a way. And then to the left of those are story and fable. Now, if you go into both 20 and 26, they both have doorways back out to 1, unlike 41 and 21, which is unique of those two. And then also, they each have a bell, a ringing sound producer. So I don't know if I mentioned in the text, there's a ringing behind one of the doors. Okay. 26, there's a bell laying on the ground, and it's silent. It's not ringing until the end of the text there. In 20, there's a telephone, which is ringing when you get in, but then it stops. So the ringing's going on when you enter 20 and then stops, and ringing isn't going when you enter 26 and it starts. So I think there's a dual clue to both of those rooms, but one, if you look at the nuances, ends up being the right clue, or the right room. So 26, that's where the bell is silent when you enter, and then it gets rung as a distraction by the guide. And then beyond that, we have the story at the back of the book. And I wonder if the back of the book isn't supposed to mirror the front of the book with the red herring. So there's a red herring on the front cover, which people just kind of figure, oh yeah, there's red herrings in the maze. But I wonder if that red herring isn't talking about the story door in specific, as that door is the red herring.
Why that connection? Why would the red herring be referring to story? Oh, do you just mean because the first room contains all those fake clues to 20?
Yeah, yeah. Well, in the back of the book gives it pretty much says story might be the right door. Maybe you should consider going through story. And then, so the front of the book and the back of the book seem like they have kind of a connection there.
Not only but in the directions, when they're using an example of how to navigate the book, they say, for example, the room on page 1 has doors leading to rooms 20, 26, 41, and 21. To go through door number 20, simply turn to page 20.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So,
once again. Yeah. And yeah, so there's some interesting mirrors there. And another interesting part of that whole mirror, which I think we talked about when we talked about 20, is that 20 is the end of the path, whereas 26 is actually the beginning of the path. And that with the ringing, there's a nice bit of symmetry there. So that was kind of my spiel on that whole part of it. I have another thing that has to do with silence of the maze, but maybe we should talk about this first.
well, let's try to go like one, I don't know, phenomenon at a time, like one piece.
Okay.
Like if we're talking about that sunbeam coming in, which is
Yeah.
41 and 21. Worth noting, for whatever it's worth, that you can see from in the prologue, you can see into the door in room 1, and you can see the door in room 41. You can see the bottle, you can see the light on the door, although the bottle looks completely different, or very different from the prologue to room 1 for whatever reason. Which itself is kind of it certainly draws your attention towards 41, and the mention of the sun certainly makes it seem like the sun is pointing at 41. Although, as you say, it's ambiguous. I mean, the sun is glaring, and it's hitting two different doors, so it's not clear that if the sun were a clue, that it would be cluing either one of those in particular.
My experience with Manson's use of adjectives elsewhere in the book is if the adjective is kind of negative, then you're to take it as a don't go that way.
Yeah.
So if it had said the sun is shining on, the sun shined at me through the gateway instead of the sun glared at me, it would be, I wouldn't know what to do with that, knowing that 41 and 21 aren't correct. But since glare is kind of a negative thing.
Not only glare, but that sentence comes right on the tail of, it's easy to get lost, I said helpfully, this can be a sinister place. And then the next sentence is, the sun glared at me through the gateway. And it's part of the same paragraph, too, which is sort of odd because just semantically it doesn't seem to have any connection to the statements that came before it.
Right. It's a thought.
Right. So if that implies that those statements should be tied together.
Yeah, and that's how I took it with my interpretation.
Yeah, getting lost, sinister, the sun glaring, it applies to those too. Although, interestingly, the sunbeam, as it crosses through the room, highlights the picture of a cup that's on the door to 26.
Right.
It's the only image that's lit up that way.
Yeah.
I take it to be a clue to that door, but I guess it's hard to take that too seriously too, given that there's all this suggestion that the sun is pointing out the way that you don't want to go.
Right.
But it is interesting that it happens that way anyway.
Yeah. But I think.
Oh, and I forgot the other thing. For what this is worth, whether people buy it or not, is. Uh-oh. Here, you talk for a while. We've got someone coming in the door.
Okay. So there's a solution that Vince doesn't like. I'll talk about while he's not here, so he can't argue with me. I hope it's Barry at the door. So there's the silences that have to do with what's in the text. I look at the paper as kind of being instruction that the text and the picture are both important. Oh, he's back. I'm going to start talking about that. What were you saying, Vince?
The semicircle of light that comes through the archway and then falls on the door so that the circular handle of the door is off to the side, I said, is itself reminiscent of the cup on the door to room 26.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
Which is interesting. Now that I think about it.
Especially given that the cup is kind of illuminated.
Well, and we were just talking about there's this textual stuff suggesting that the sun is pointing out something, a way that you don't want to go, but actually it's the glare of the sun, the direct light of the sun that's pointing out the incorrect way, but then taken another way, not just directly where it's pointing, it is giving an indication of the way you should go. You know,
right.
the cup is illuminated by the side, looking through the sunlight, and then an image of a cup is projected on the wall, but the door to 26 is not being glared at by the sun.
Right.
So maybe that's a legit way to read those sun clues.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Where else? Where do you want to go next?
Well, we could talk about the one we disagree about. You want to talk about that? This is something I've suggested before. So I was starting to say this while Vince was away, but I guess he's probably not going to leave again, so I'll talk about it now. So we have all this paper on the floor, which not a lot's been worked with. I feel like the paper is still important, though. People have read little messages in there, like Gentile said, "Go 17" was one, and I, and smiley face, things like that.
Go 17. That's been a lot of people have thought that's legit. That's been around for over a decade. That was back on the John Bailey site. I'm not totally convinced that that's an intentional message that Go 17, but it's not like it's just Dave who says that. Probably the majority. That's probably the majority view.
All right. Well, he's someone I heard it from. Or read it from. I've actually never. Well, I don't know if I've heard his voice even. I don't think I have.
Wait, did you say, wait. Did you just say you haven't heard his voice?
Yeah, I haven't. I don't think I have.
You still haven't watched the Room 24 episode?
I only watched one episode of all of these, and that was the one. And I only kind of half watched. But that doesn't mean you, gentle viewers, should be watching this. This is a good use of your time.
You know, there have been a number of episodes that you weren't on. It's not like you're just saying, hey, I'm on the episode, I lived it, so I don't have to watch it. You're saying it's not even worth your time to watch the episode that you're not on.
It's on my to-do list. I'm just a really busy guy. You're lucky you got me on this thing, because I'm on all sorts of podcasts all the time, and have lots of other endeavors as well. So I'm sorry. I wish I could clone myself so one of me could just watch the Maze podcast and the other one could actually do. But
the amount of time we spent hassling you about watching the Room 24 episode, and just you could have watched it like 5 times already.
That was scary. It was scary, and plus Paris is a big city. You can't just, I'm only here for so long. Europe, man.
All right, you're right.
Back with the silences. One of Manson's big thing is linking text to pictures, right? And having both involved, and that's kind of his goal, I think, as an artist, or one of his big goals that he set out for himself is to make that happen. And I don't know if he felt totally successful with that, from what I've read, but there's definitely a text-picture thing. I think that the paper is kind of textual in a way, but it's not specific in its words. I'm tangenting a bit. So there's the silence of the maze's silence is being eloquent. and that works with the anagram puzzle. I think that also works with the paper. And Vince does not agree with me on this. So my thought process was, okay, there's the paper going underneath 21. There's that kind of arrow-looking thing pointing at 20 on the easel, right? I see so seeing those two things, I'm like, okay, where's the thing that points to 41 so that we can do another odd man out with the paper? I think there's a 41 in the paper on the ground, which I think is a great clue because it uses paper in 3 different ways to point to 3 different doors, none of them being the correct door. And it kind of mirrors the anagram thing to me. But the 41, so I'll give Vince's argument against it. The 41 has an extra line on it. So you have to kind of omit that line in order to see it. 41 on the paper.
Yeah.
And so you can look at the page yourself and decide if you agree with that. I think the extra line kind of is the same sort of extra line as on the arrow, but you can see the arrow is an arrow, but not the 41 as a 41.
Do you see the 26 in the paper? Have you read?
I don't. I haven't looked for it though, and that's the problem. I think that's one problem with the way we solve maze, and I think that's one that you're very good at, like cautioning us against, right? Whether or not you could actually use these clues to get through the maze versus knowing the right door and then trying to find clues that support that afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. Which is like a way people might use the Bible or the Constitution. They come up with their opinion and then they try to find the support from some interpretive document, right?
Yeah.
And that could be what I'm doing. And that, I mean, if I with my explanation of how I went through it, that's what I did, right? I was looking for something that pointed to 41, and I found it. Mm-hmm. Now, so it's I can't see a 26 in there.
There is well, see, I don't know. And I'm not even sure I'm pointed out in the right place. Let me see whether I can get this image. This never works when I try to do this. It's supposed to be like the curl of the paper. Like this is a 2, and that's a 6. You have your own copy there?
Yeah, I do.
Can you see that? Does that? Oh, that can't be right because that would be upside down. Oh no, it's the bottom part of the scroll, like at the bottom of the easel, the leftmost leg. There's that curl in the paper there that's supposed to be a 2. Do you see that?
Like if you look at it upside down?
No. It just like it's not an image drawn on the paper. It's the curve of the paper itself.
Right, I've seen the curve of the paper. I see a 2 upside down, kinda.
Well, a 2 upside down should be a 2 the other way too, right?
Not really, because the top bump.
Oh, the top ends up too big, and it looks. Yeah, I know.
I'm not really seeing it, but
I might even be pointing in the wrong place. I don't know, but some people have found that compelling. I mean that's up on the abyss, but I'm not sure about that one.
There is one by the front rightmost one that has a weird bend in it.
Yeah.
Like kind of weird bubble.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what that.
I guess it's not particularly fair for me to say that I don't find it compelling when I don't even know where it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. But that kind of fits what I was saying in arguing against my solution, that you can find something if you're looking for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of flipped on whether I think these symbols mean anything or not. At first, I for a long time just thought that was just a bunch of garbage meant to be symbols and represent writing, but there's nothing in there. But it seems I guess it seems strange to me if Manson had squandered this opportunity to hide some kind of meeting in there. And it seems like it'd probably be more work to try to make random symbols that don't mean anything than to just throw down some symbols with hidden stuff in there.
Yeah.
So it might be something that's too obscure for anyone to find, or it could be that stuff like the H, you can find the word high in there, or maybe Go 17's legit. Maybe he put some stuff in there, but then started just adding lines to it so it wasn't as clear.
But
Who knows?
broadly, it could be a clue that you're supposed to take the writing with the pictures. If you just looked at the paper abstractly as writing, okay, here's writing in the picture. You need to take writing with the picture. But I feel good about my solution though too using the paper, so I have another use for it that works for me. But
what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. David Gentile points out, maybe he's not the only one, but he's prominently pointed out that there's the astronomical symbol for the sun on the paper there, and next to it a star.
oh, is that the circle with the dot in? Is that the sun?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the aspects is next to it.
Yeah, and given the prominence of the sun in the room, it seems like it just seems hard to believe that Manson wasn't aware of what he was doing there. I don't know that it means anything, but
no,
there.
I think it does. But yeah, I think that's maybe like a little Easter egg kind of
And
thing.
there's certainly a lot of markings on there that just look like letters. I mean, you can see a pretty plain D and an F and an H and an I.
E, L, K.
Yeah. I mean, there are clear symbols on there. Whether they can be assembled in a meaningful way is hard to say. I wonder. I mean, I think probably more they're just there to disguise the like that's on the wall, although they don't do it very well. But again, this is the first room, so it's the easiest to find that kind of stuff in.
But if you're going for like the like is something that you wouldn't really even need to look for until you've already gotten to the middle.
Right, and it doesn't help.
It's not the first room anymore in that case. So I think if it was purely disguised, they probably wouldn't have hung it up on the wall.
Well, he wants you to be able to see it in some way, for Christ's sake. But I don't think. I don't think that everyone who sees this automatically thinks to read that as backwards writing going down. There's a mess of symbols.
DCBA.
What's that?
That's because they didn't think to use that DCBA method.
That's a clue to it. Until they put that together, they don't really have a chance at figuring that out.
Yeah, it's impossible. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what I don't get is why there are those two little dashes at the top of the like sign.
I think that's just disguise. Just like the line on the arrow and the line in the 41. It's just to kind of make it seem more like random writing that you have to search through.
It could be. I don't know.
Like the E itself has extra lineage on it.
Because it goes back a little bit on the two.
Yeah, and the middle prong goes forward too much too.
Okay, I mean that's just stylized.
It's just to disguise it a little more.
It's kind of made. It kind of looks like I don't know if there's a different term for it, but like Asian calligraphy. You've seen.
Yeah.
That's kind of what this writing style reminds me of.
Yeah, it's like calligraphy. It's a calligraphy class. That's cool.
Also been noted, and probably meaningless, but it seems strange that the like is just stuck to the wall with no kind of fasteners visible. But the paper that's stuck to the drawing board is tacked on there. I guess you couldn't really tack something to that brick wall anyway, so it would have to be some kind of adhesive underneath or a hook or something.
Well, if that easel is for working on your calligraphy, you don't want to just work on the same.
Right.
You have to be able to take it down.
Right. You don't glue it on there.
You can paste that like to the wall and be proud that that was your masterpiece.
It's still unusual in general in the maze for something to be stuck on a wall without fasteners. You know, there's so many rooms where we're counting nails and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it's unusual for something to just be stuck up there with no indication of how it's staying there.
I think it's because it's brick. If the 20, 26, and 41 and 21 signs are also don't have visible fasteners.
Yeah, that's true.
Now that you mention it. So back
Now,
to the paper, there's one thing that we haven't mentioned. There's that crumpled up bit. Do you have any interpretation for that?
I don't. I don't know if that's maybe where it's supposed to be that was torn off of the paper coming out from under 21. You know, kind of like if you've ever torn off a long string of toilet paper or something, the place where you're holding it ends up crumpled up. Because it's crumpled like in the middle, and then there's a straight part after that.
Right. But no, if you look, there's that bit on the ground beneath the crumpled piece that actually would match up with what's going in under 21. It looks like half of a pi symbol, maybe.
Yeah.
And it seems like the crumpled up bit is laid on top of that. So the actual tear is clean, and that there's just this crumpled up stuff on top for some reason.
Well, I thought that was all part of the same piece, and it's just the place it crumples where you hold it, not necessarily where it tears. Although I guess ordinarily it would tear right above where you're holding it. That doesn't seem to have been the case there.
Yeah, well, in that pie piece, though, it seems like it's just a square by itself. It doesn't seem like it's connected to the scroll on top of it, the crumpled scroll.
It could be. I could see it either way. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely he took the time to make it crumpled like that there, and I got no clue why, really.
Yeah.
Although it's interesting, there are some very clear letters leading into the crumpled part. You know, it goes E, L, pretty clear H, I think.
Yeah.
And then crumpled up, so it's almost like somebody was starting to write something, and then, you know, somebody came along and obscured it so you couldn't read it. But it's kind of hard to think of what could start with ELH.
Right. Or it could be anagrammed ELH, or those could be, so if this, for example, this could be part of the guide quest, right? If that's the case, those could be letters of the guide name. Although that doesn't fit with your Minotaur hypothesis, does it?
No.
Well, it could if that L is a T.
It's El Minotauro.
You could have all the letters for the. It's the upside down T. And the H and the E could also be upside down. If you look at it upside down, it actually looks E-like. But
Oh, I can kind of see what you're saying there. Maybe. Other thing to mention about the drawing board is just, I think it's a bit of a visual pun about going back to the drawing board.
yeah.
Like, of course, anytime you step off the path, a friend of mine refers to the loop as a ball return, although I think he's actually kind of said that as a negative comment on the idea that that's all it's there for, is to take you back to room one. Like, he thinks there's something more there to it. I think he said it's not just a ball return, but I like that phrasing of it, and I think that is pretty much what it is, that the loop is just kind of like a ball return.
Uh-huh.
If you fall off the loop, then you got to come back to room one. You're back to the drawing board.
Right, right. I can see that. I like the idea that there's more to the loop than that. There wouldn't be much book without the loop.
Well, it's two things. I think number one, probably something about the guide is on there. That's hard to believe there's nothing about the guide in there. And then two, there has to be a loop for there to be a path. Like, if it were all path, then
There wouldn't be much about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
They got to let you wander around and get lost somewhere.
Right.
So you're not just immediately saying there's no way to the center and then finding the hidden door and all that stuff. It gives you some space to roam around in.
Yeah. He could have done it though, so that it was just path and track.
Yeah, but I think, well, he could have. He would have needed to make the path a lot bigger which means that the path wouldn't have been just. Well, I mean, the path is almost entirely just the rooms that are on the 16-step path. He's got a few extra rooms now. He would have either had to expand the trap or expand the. Well, I mean, he could have done that. He could have just had no way back from.
That's what I'm saying. It could not be a ball return. It just be a massive trap. But then, what's all the like? What would you clue to? But I guess we don't know that about the trap itself. What's it? What are the doors?
Right. It would just be like 26 rooms full of messages that you're screwed.
I would enjoy that.
Anything else about the picture that we haven't really talked about? The doorway itself kind of looks like a capital A, which does not help you in the right direction, but
no, it doesn't.
But it certainly stands out to me as looking like the letter A.
Yeah.
It could be mislead you.
Right. Well, and that could be like also with the glaring sun. You know, negative. We did room we did last time with the floorboards that creaked and groaned.
Oh, room 2.
Room 2. Oh yeah, right. Next page. I feel like it's a very similar clue, right? The floorboards creaked and groaned. The floorboards clue to 22, and 22 is the way you don't want to go. And creaking and groaning are negative adjectives.
Yeah, you know, not in room 2. You know, a bit of a digression here. Not only are there 22 floorboards going across, but they're running toward room 22. Right.
Yeah. They're running that way. Go counter to their direction, their creaking, groaning direction.
Okay, back to. I think that's. I can't think of anything else to say about the picture.
No, I can't either.
All right.
Oh, what do you think about decisions? Too many decisions. That sentence.
That is an odd one. The only convincing thing, I find it somewhat convincing as to why that. Well, I guess 2 reasons. Number 1, because he needs to work in the word story there. And so the idea if someone says the story of my life, so somebody has to say something before that. Right. So it could just be there for that reason. Now, the other thing that it does is it has the phrase too many in there, which if you take that to mean the numeral 2 and then many as opposed to 2-0, not 2-0, but too many, that could lead you to room 26-26. I don't know if that's a little too, we're digging a little too deep on that one, but it doesn't strike me as entirely implausible.
Well, that fits with my interpretation, which didn't use the too many, but the decisions, that's like a DC to me, and kind of goes with the dual cluing of 20 and 26. You have D and C, drum and cup. Maybe that's talking about how you have to pick between those two if you've gotten that far. It's kind of like levels to this room, right? First, you're kind of trying to eliminate 41 and 21. Well, you're not consciously doing that, but maybe that was the idea. And then you have to choose between 20 and 26.
You know, now that I think about it, it is the use of the word decisions there is strange because it's not that there are too many decisions. It's one decision. There are too many options.
Right.
This is the first decision they've had. So it does seem like the word decision is there deliberately, although options, too many options doesn't quite sound right in the context of this book either. I don't know.
Well, choices.
Yeah, choices. That choices would be more natural.
Right.
Although, really, what's the difference between, well, the difference between decision and choice is that choice is kind of ambiguous. Choice can mean decision, or it can mean the thing that you're choosing is your choice.
Right.
So choice would make more sense there. Choices. Too many choices. But instead, it's decisions. Too many decisions. But there aren't too many decisions.
Yeah. So it's number 2 and DC.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, God, I'm jumping all around. I want to mention, just so we don't forget, we have absolutely no clue what to do with this, but that drum that appears on door 20, there's also a similar drum above the one of the doors in room 33.
33, yeah.
So with no one, I don't think anyone's given a satisfactory explanation of why the drum appears there as well as here. Maybe they're unrelated, but you certainly have seen this drum by the time you're in room 33.
Yeah.
Maybe it's supposed to communicate something. But of course, it's over a door you can't go to, so what is it? Who knows? Anyway, that's that.
Where's the door coming from?
It's coming from 17, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah, it comes from 17.
Well, that's interesting in light of the Go 17 thing. Because this is just far off stuff, but the Go for the Go 17 is kind of rolling towards the drum.
Yeah. Oh, I never even really thought about that. Yeah, you could take that Go and put it with the sort of messed up arrow on the easel, and you could be reading Go, and there's an arrow, and they're both pointing towards 20.
Yeah. Go that way.
Yeah, that paper really has it out for you, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the other thing about that arrow on the easel that's pointing towards 20 is then when you get to 20, there's another arrow in there.
Right.
Going the wrong way again to room 27. And in fact, that's mentioned on the back of the book as well. An arrow pointing the way, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
Not only that, listen.
Oh, I'm listening.
Okay. On the back of the book, it even says what looks like the bottom half of an archer's arrow. Why does it specify archer's arrow? When it says arrow, it seems pretty obvious that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But if you're differentiating it from the arrow that you see pointing to the door in room 1, which is just the symbolic arrow, then you maybe would need to specify that it's an archer's arrow.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I think that if you couple that with the red herring on the front, I think it's just saying the whole back of the book is a red herring. And it's kind of leading you on this false path. Then you go to 27. Where's the word? An arrow in 27.
What are you looking for?
I was just looking at 27 to see if there was an additional arrow.
Oh. I don't think so. Although what there is, and 27.
Yeah.
Okay, the wrong. There's
not an arrow, but
both spaces. They're kind of arrow-ish.
Yeah.
But that's kind of straining things, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And that's not mentioned on the back either.
No, well, but that's, he only leads you through a couple rooms there. All right. And we've got an apple on the door to 21. There's an apple in room 9.
Do you think that Archer's arrow, the fact that he repeated two A words, might be another red herring to 21?
Who knows, man? Something else I just thought of that's interesting. In the directions, it says anything in this book might be a clue. Anything in this book might be a clue.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff that he mentions on the back of the book is not.
It's not a clue. Right. Yeah, I think you might be right there.
Although he does mention story appearing in the text and blah, blah, blah. But in any case, I think that does suggest that the back of the book is not trustworthy when the direction of anything in the book may be a clue.
We're good. They thought we wouldn't come up with anything to room one.
I didn't. I thought we would just be, running down stuff, and maybe this would be a good episode for new people. But this
I
is.
didn't think that. I thought the opposite. I thought this would be good for the old hands. I think a lot of the old hands just kind of gloss over room one.
I think you're right there, and I think it's a good room because I think Manson made it easier, and so it seems like there's a lot going on here. Maybe he started with this room, and he had a lot of vim and vigor, and he's ready to go. And then by the end, he's just like maybe room 24 was the last one he did. He's just like, God, I can't draw another. Just there, you're dead. You're all dead.
Yeah. Have you ever read Snake and Bacon's Cartoon Cabaret?
Yes.
There's the one where Mark Twain and Einstein are going to the center of the earth, I think. And there's a part where they're in the dark and they comment about how if someone were to draw this in some sort of picto-fiction, this would be a really easy room to draw. Supports your 24 being the last room. Like, yeah, I'll just put some cartoon eyes and it'll all be black. I'm done.
All right, let's go line by line through the text. You
Okay.
hear that, listeners? We're going to go line by line through the text. If you can't handle it, you just jump ship now because we're doing it. Okay.
Alternating words.
No, I don't mean we have to go. Well, no, let's not do it that way.
Okay.
You almost agreed to it, but I guess we probably should read the lines as we're talking about them. Okay, so it starts out with the entrance hall of the maze. Probably nothing clued there. Probably just telling you that's what this room is, which you know because you just got here. But it's descriptive. It's accurate. It's
possibly the sun entrances you. You're entranced by the sun, so you go the wrong way. All right, let's move on.
Okay. They looked carefully at the bronze doors.
Bronze doors. We're reading simultaneously.
Just
Ready?
read. You read it. No.
Trying to choose. The uncertainty of visitors is one of my little pleasures.
Okay, one sentence at a time. So they looked carefully at the bronze doors trying to choose. Now, it was David Gentile who pointed out that with that carefully at the bronze doors, you've kind of got a series there of CABD, trying to choose, which, your mileage may vary on how convincing you find that as a deliberate thing, but I'd point out I don't see any reason for him to specify that those are bronze doors.
Right.
And a bronze door is kind of an unusual thing.
It is. Where's the A there? I'm sorry, where's the A? At?
Yeah. It'd be nice.
I think that is a little weak.
The at's a little weak, especially since you have to leave out the when you're doing the CABD there. It seems like if you're leaving out some words, you would leave out at the same time that you're leaving out the. I agree. But on the other hand, I think it's plausible. I can't think of why he's saying bronze doors there.
Yeah, I feel like there has to be something for bronze.
Mm-hmm. See, it's carefully at the bronze doors, trying to choose, and then it ends with a C word, which C would be the correct door. But again, take that.
Well, C, there's two C words in that sentence.
Well, right, carefully. That's part of the CABD. But then after that clause, then it's trying to choose. So the C comes back there.
Yeah, okay.
So buy it if you want. The uncertainty of visitors is one of my little pleasures. Again, David Gentile pointed out the connection. Oh, you probably didn't hear him say that because you didn't watch the Room 24 episode. But go to Room 24, and he said, and there's a line, by the time my uncertain visitors turned to ask me what to do, I was already far away. And I think that's just a brilliant connection. So in the beginning here, it just seems like something mischievous or whatever about the guide. He likes watching people try to find their way through. But then when you land in room 24, you get what he's really talking about when he's talking about the uncertainty of visitors.
His
He
little
likes,
fall.
yeah. The next little bit we've already talked about. It's easy to get lost. I said helpfully. This could be a sinister place. The sun glared at me through the gateway. We talked about that.
While we're talking about how great David Gentile is, one of his kind of guiding principles for the maze that he talks about, or writes about, I haven't actually heard him talk, is that the easier clues point the wrong way. And that line could be instructive. Because we talked about the last part of that paragraph, but we didn't talk about the first part. It's easy to get lost. So the easy clues get you lost.
Although, I'll tell you, certainly you can't rely on the easier clues because sometimes easy things point the wrong way. I certainly don't think it's true that the easy clues always point the wrong way. They're not false, they're just unreliable.
Well, and what's easy to you might be hard for someone else.
Yeah, but like in room 10, you've got the umbrella pointing at the right door, and you've got the baton pointing at the right door.
Yeah.
That's of the same.
Several times where the easy clue can get you there.
Right, that's the same kind of thing as the archer's arrow in room 20 that is explicitly noted as a clue on the back, but is an easy clue that points the wrong way. The umbrella and the baton.
33, I think, are pretty easy, and those point the right way.
Which one?
The planks in 33.
I don't. But that's not obvious at all. I mean, that's everyone in the world looked at that room and didn't see that.
But once you look at them, it's like it seems pretty easy.
It seems easy to you. Nobody else got it independently, unless, well, White Raven says something else is going on in there. But it certainly is not as immediately apparent as something prominently pointing at a door. But I'd say room 25 is pretty simple and straightforward, where it's just the light side.
I don't think that's the right answer, but we won't go into that.
Well, even if there's something more to it or a different interpretation to it, the immediately obvious interpretation of it does point you toward the right door.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and the horrified expression at the
yeah. Okay. Something was ringing behind one of the doors. As you've mentioned, there are two doors that have ringing behind it. There's the bell behind 26, which was not being rung, but does seem to indicate a path when you get there.
And it should be rung again.
Yeah. But when you go through 20, that's where the ringing was coming from. It's coming from a phone that apparently continues ringing throughout your journey along the 16-step path until you make it back, then finally stops ringing.
Yeah. If you go the right way.
Mm-hmm. They spent some time trying to decide which door it was, not understanding that the silences of the maze are as eloquent as the sounds. Maybe one of the most fundamental lines in the book, because time and time again there are going to be places in maze where you're going to be looking for the door that's not mentioned, not indicated. And it's certainly the deal. What's going on here, it also suggests when you go to 20 and there's the ringing phone, that if you think about it, you've gone the wrong way. You're not trying to find out where the sound is coming from. The silences are just as important.
Right.
And of course, when you go through the door to 26, you've got the patrons in the theater who are sort of shushing, indicating silence there, which I think is another indication that you're on the right path.
Yeah.
Although it could also be an indication in 26 just that you need to use the same sort of eloquence of silence solution, because that's another room where it's the
door that's not pointing to.
Yeah. Although there is some indication of the right door in there, so maybe that's not. But certainly all the wrong doors are pointed out as well. Okay.
Well, and there the silent bell points the right way. But the ringing bell would.
Yeah, good point. Decisions, one said. Too many decisions. We talked about that line. The story of my life, said another. That's there just to put the word story into the text so that it references the word story over door 20. We don't want to be late, said a third, opening one of the doors. The word late is there to as an anagram of the word tail over door 41. I don't know whether there's any reason that he appended that opening one of the doors on there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a certain flow of action happening here, right? They're standing in front of the doors in the first part of the dialogue. Then they open the door, and one of them looks into the door, which I think is one of the only time I can think of in the maze where they actually look through a doorway before they go in.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting. I don't know what to make of it. Um,
Opening one of the doors. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that, if anything.
yeah.
Nary a soul to be seen, said the first, peering into the gloom. So there we've got nary as an anagram of yarn over the door, 21. So now we've eliminated everything but fable. But then we've
That's there too. We have two other things with that line. One, I think that you want to talk about relating to devils. Do you want to talk about that? There's something I want to talk about relating to gloom.
I was going to talk about gloom too, but you're thinking maybe the mention of souls connects
Yeah,
to
I think that's been mentioned before. But the gloom is dark, right? If you open up 41 or 21, it's not going to be dark in there because you're going to have sunlight streaming in.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
So
I
if we're
didn't see that until we went through this line by line just now.
now, how does that really help you out? I mean, it's not really indicated that they went into the door that he opened up there.
That's true.
Although it is the same door that the other one opened up. One of them opened a door, another one looked into it.
And generally, if the visitors do something, they're going the right way.
Right. If the text indicates which door they went through, that's the door you want to go through. If it says they opened a door, you don't go through a door that's already open.
Right.
It's just not clear that the door they're opening and looking through is then the one we're
Through.
supposed to assume they went through.
Yeah.
So then the final one, I waited patiently for them to choose which way to go into. I wonder why there's a double ellipsis there.
That is weird. Maybe because the ellipse after go is him waiting patiently, like waiting during that ellipse, and then the into, because always at the end they want it to be like a seamless transition to the ellipse that starts each one, right?
And that is a repetition of the word choose.
Uh-huh.
So if you bought that, if you bought the CABD and then the C and choose stuff above, maybe this is connected to that again. Although if you saw that and bought it, then I don't know that this really adds much to it. But
Yeah. One thing about that. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just reading it again to myself and then saying I didn't know what to make of it.
So this doesn't give me anything, but there's a repetition of waiting and speed in this text. So it ends with him waiting patiently. The third person talking says they don't want to be late, and then where's the other one? There's another instance of them taking their time. Oh, they spent some time trying to decide which door it was. So I don't know if that's just meant to be kind of like instructive, like take your time on these rooms, don't just bust through picking doors willy-nilly, or not. But there's three things about the speed they take.
It is an interesting contrast. They spend some time. He's waiting patiently, but the one says we don't want to be late. But I mean that's only there to work the word late into it. I don't think there's any literal application you can make of that line.
Right.
We have no reason to think they can be late for anything.
Yeah. Unless you understand how time works in the maze.
Yeah. We don't
But
want
another
to.
meaning of late is dead,
That's true.
which could.
Or it could mean you're pregnant if you're late.
Oh, right. Yeah. Or it could mean like you haven't arrived at an appointment you were supposed to be at a certain time.
Yeah, it does mean that sometimes. Okay, so I think we've made it through all the lines in the text. I think I can't think of another room where such a large percentage of the text seems to have a fairly meaningful relationship to the the book, the image, the decision, the puzzle, whatever,
Yeah.
or at least that we can identify. Now, I suspect that if Manson were to sit down with you and start explaining to you what's going on in these rooms, he could take apart every room here and tell you line by line how it relates to something that's going on. I don't think very much of this book is written just for the sake of a fictional narrative. I just don't think it tells much of a story in that way. I think virtually everything he put in here was in service to.
It's all in the clue. And kind of one of the things that brought that home to me is there are parts in the book where they talk about the narrator himself as being positioned in the room. I think, what is that room? I don't remember the number. One with the broken glass.
23.
23, okay. To his right, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not really actually referring to him. Just like the sun glaring at him is not necessarily referring to him in this room.
Mm-hmm.
It's all just occasionally, like in room 33, you can use it literally, right? The words literally to get you somewhere. But a lot of times it is all just clue.
Right, or maybe an even better example is in room 15 where it says at least three of us can sit down here. Has no literal application to the room. Doesn't make any sense in that room.
Right.
So you thinking about it, trying to think of this as a story with these visitors and they're saying something like that just won't make any sense.
Right. But at the same time, I feel like that's part of the appeal of Maze is people taking it as a story. Because it just seems like a really mysterious story then. If you don't look at it as like, okay, ignore any sort of literal meaning, this is all just clues for you in a kind of more abstract, puzzly way. I don't think that's really what grabs people to Maze. It's kind of like
It's certainly a part of the appeal. I mean, like we've you don't have the same story that almost everyone else has, but almost everyone else has. We read this book as kids and got obsessed with it before we knew anything about solving any of it. And absolutely, I mean, when so I read it as a kid, didn't figure out anything. When I first read the solution to Room One, which I didn't come up with as a kid myself, and so when I read what the solution to Room One was, I was like, that's not fair. How could the kids saying those lines know that they're supposed to use those clues to figure out the right door? That doesn't make any sense. How could these visitors come in and say things that then indicate which door they're supposed to go through? That doesn't make any sense
they
at
have
all.
to write down everything they said, and then whatever they'd also have to know whatever the guide was thinking.
Right.
Also, no, your kid Vince makes a good point.
Well, he was just looking at it all wrong, but that just, I mean, that is part of the appeal of the book is seeing it that way, seeing it as a story.
Yeah, and it's even knowing their clues, it's or fairly abstract clues. It's hard not to still read it that way.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of aura of mystery.
And sometimes you do kind of have to think about it that way, or at least sometimes it does make sense to think about it that way. Like when they're opening doors, when they say they open a door to go out, that means they
Right, that's
go through a
literal.
door to
You
open.
have to think about that, and that I think that's part of the fun of the book is you have to kind of figure out how you're supposed to think in a given room, or there could be multiple ways to think. I think, like I've said countless times, a lot of times you can find like a cut and dried solution that you can point to this and this and this, and other times it's kind of like little, like kind of almost subliminal suggestions that you kind of prompt your intuition to go a certain way. And I think some of the time we can't find solutions, cut and dry solutions, because maybe that wasn't the intention necessarily to do that.
And I was very resistant to that point of view, but I guess I've come around to it because it just seems like it has to be the case.
Yeah.
Like I clung for a long time to the idea that where there's a solution, once we see it, there's not going to be any doubt. And we're all going to know that's what he intended and that's what the solution was. And as we've seen, that's not the case. Someone will think, I found the solution, and look at how clear it is, and it's obviously correct. And then, half the people that hear about it will say, that's nonsense. That's not a real solution. That's bogus. No way he meant that. And I mentioned on here in one of the early podcasts that I always thought your room 7 solution with the missing eyes was a great solution, and it seems to me totally obvious that Manson intended that. But back in the beginning, when I was sending out emails to people who used to be involved with maze stuff, people who had been credited with solving the big puzzle before, or credited with stuff on John Bailey's site, and I contacted this guy named Andrew Plotkin, who is apparently some sort of a web celebrity to people who run in certain circles. I didn't know who he was, and I still don't know too much about him. He does a lot of interactive fiction type stuff, but he's one of the people who's credited with, I guess, initially solving like the central riddle of the maze, like the riddle of the path and whatever. And he is involved a lot with making puzzles and in puzzle competitions and stuff, and he's a good puzzly guy. But I was telling him about, like, hey, for the longest time, no one knew what was going on with Maze. Does it have solutions in every room? Is it just a bunch of stuff to confuse you outside the path, or what's the deal? And I said, hey, look, there's this website where it looks like we're figuring things out, and there are riddles in every room, and this can be figured out. And I used your room 7 solution as an example of, like, look at some of the cool stuff that's been found. And he just completely dismissed that and said that was, he didn't see it. The way that he looked at the eyes, and he could see interpreting it a couple different ways. So he wasn't convinced that meant anything. He was still of the opinion that Maze was essentially unsolvable. Or maybe that the puzzles were so ambiguous as to not really be interesting, and there were other puzzles that people could be working on that you don't have to keep torturing yourself with Maze. I'm maybe unfairly paraphrasing from what he said, but it was something like that. I mean, he was insulting to me or Maze or the Abyss or anything, but he was kind of dismissive of that room solution that I thought was totally gold. And so I think at first I just tried to say, no, Andrew Plotkin's just crazy. He's just nuts. He can't see what's obviously correct. And I still kind of feel that way. I still feel like that's a great solution. But there are so many other solutions where it gets repeated over and over. I think this solution's great. Other people don't like it. Other people think this solution's great. I think it's totally nuts. Christopher Manson apparently confirms the Cask of Amontillado extended interpretation of Room 39, which is, well, I'm not going to say any more about it, but I'm trying to reduce the amount of time that I spend complaining about solutions that I think are irrational or unfair, because I think all it does is discourage other people from finding solutions that may well be the correct solutions.
It makes for great television when you do that.
Well, at least I'm not going to pick a fight with something that Manson has already confirmed on here. At least I'll save it for when there's some debate. But those Cask of Amontillado, that's nonsense. That's ridiculous. Okay, no, I'll shut up.
That it's still valid for you not to have that be your solution to that room.
I think so, and I've always said that the extended Cask of Amontillado reading is not in any way inconsistent with the reading that we've attached to that room and the things that seem pretty obviously to be clued there as part of the solution. I mean, it could be Cask of Amontillado and that.
Yeah. I think like meaning for any artwork is in the communication between the finished thing and the mind of whoever's perceiving it, right? So neither side really gets to say for sure what that meaning is. So the person who created this doesn't get to say what the meaning is for you, right? Like I don't know if there's some song that's touched your life, or some poetry or painting or whatever.
Yeah, like that song you sang to Laura.
Yeah, that touched her life really powerfully. But I bet if you were to interview her about what it meant to her, or like what she thought was going through my head, it might not be what I had intended at all. But that doesn't mean that what it meant to her isn't valid.
Yeah.
They've got a life of their own as they go out into the world and they interact with people separate from the artist.
I mean, I agree with you. I think with puzzles, it's generally seen as different than that, and I don't know that I completely disagree with seeing it different. Here's what I would say about puzzle solutions. I mean, let's say that I'm trying to think of an example. Well, I mean, without getting into specifics, let's say I give you a puzzle where I give you a map and I give you a certain number of destinations you need to hit, and I say figure out the shortest route to travel between all these routes. And the solution that I've figured out for that I've written down, this is the solution. You look at the puzzle and you come up with a different solution that actually does it in shorter amount of time, shorter distance, I guess is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's no question that your solution is then right. I mean, as long as it's accurate, your solution to the problem that I gave you is correct. The solution that I thought was the solution that I came up with is not correct just because I came up with it.
Right.
So, but that's different from the kind of puzzles Manson's doing, where he is intending to communicate something to us to tell us what the right door is. And so I'd say if he creates but I still think it's the case that the things he creates could still give a better solution that he didn't intend, but in the same way, it's still kind of a failing of the author. I think if the author intended one solution, but it turns out that inadvertently the puzzle seems to have a better solution that the author didn't see or intend, especially if it points at the wrong door, you know? Which I think sometimes maybe it does.
But I think your analogy is a little faulty for a couple of reasons. One, it's not the doors we're picking we're debating, right? There's like one path and we all agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the shortest route that the puzzle author in your analogy uses. It's the thinking that goes to picking those doors that we're debating, right? Like, how did you go about that? It's like like if you as a puzzle author said that you need to use deductive logic in order to find the shortest path, and that's the only way you can do it is by using deductive logic. When someone else can use some other method, which like for Maze, what I did was guess and check. That's how I got to the middle. But so there's that, and then at the same time, I think Maze is different from another puzzle, especially in how we're doing it, because the puzzle isn't really getting to the middle and back in the shortest number of steps possible. That's not the goal we're doing. We're just trying to figure out why, you know?
Right.
Just interacting with the puzzle in a different way than a standard puzzle. Another kind of puzzle, crossword puzzle. So crossword puzzle has a bunch of clues, and this is a faulty analogy as well. But I think we have to use faulty analogies because it's hard to imagine something else like Maze, for me anyway.
I don't think they're faulty analogies. I think it's just, I think we know that none of these fit exactly with maze. We're just trying to set other examples. I didn't mean that maze is like connecting things on a map to find the shortest distance. In fact, I'm saying it's between the two. It's between a hard deductive puzzle and just like a painting or a novel or something where you put
Right.
but
I think
right.
the hard part, the hard and fast, like kind of concrete part, is the actual door numbers.
Mm.
Those are very hard to debate unless you like just change the rules of the game. And be like, I want to get to the darkness. I want to hang out with these people with eyes for infinity. That would be like finding a different like concrete route. Like so, say you have a crossword puzzle. I think this would be very difficult to do. But you have a list of clues that are interpretive enough that you could actually put multiple words in there. So like, say the clue is admit. You could have allow be one thing. Oh no could be another solution. If you could solve the puzzle in a way so that you could fill in all the things, they would fit all the clues, it's possible that it could be a completely different solution than would be in the paper the next day. But that would be really hard. That would be harder than finding alternate solutions.
I bet someone's done something like that before, though. Yeah, but then the question is, let's say if you're able to do that, and it was not intended by the author, but you're able to do it, did you solve the puzzle? And I think I'd probably say you did, and it's kind of, I don't even know if I'd call that a shortcoming of the author in that case, though, you know?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah, because
it depends on the author's intention, maybe. If they intend to be like a very one-way form of communication, or not, or have it be a more interactive.
It would certainly be a shortcoming of the author if there was like a second step after you complete the crossword puzzle that's supposed to communicate something. Like say there's a hidden theme to the puzzle, and when you answer all the things, I don't know, you can look at certain letters on it, and then it spells out a word or something. But it turns out you can fill in the blanks fairly with other answers that fit the clues as well as the intended answers, and you can fill in the whole crossword, but then you get a statement that's nonsense at the end.
Yeah.
I would consider that. I would consider that to be a failing of the author if the wrong answers to get you the wrong solution were as plausible as the answers you need to get the right solution.
But if you end up with that gobbledygook at the end, you didn't solve the puzzle right.
Well,
that's part of the puzzle in those kinds of crossword puzzles that have an additional level, like where they have certain boxes circled, like.
Right.
I'm nitpicking, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Right. I'd still say it's a flaw on the level of the crossword construction, but whatever. In terms of maze, I would say, without saying this is how I feel, but let's say, for instance, in room 34, let's assume that it was believed by all that the connection between the eyes and the word I, A-Y-E, and the yes sign on the door, on the wrong door, that was a more convincing, plausible solution to that room than the needles and eyes. Okay. And say Manson didn't intend that. It didn't occur to Manson that people were going to take the word I and use it as a homophone for AYE and then use that as another word for yes. And so he then considered that room was cluing more strongly towards the wrong door than the right door. Then I would consider that a failing of the author. We don't know whether that's the case, and certainly because people know what the correct door is and they know what Manson intended, most people are going to be loath to say, "Oh, Manson's solution is bad. It's this I solution that's good," except for, you know, some of us, we would say it. Um, but that's, I guess, just as an illustration of what I would consider a failing in this type of book. But
Yeah.
the question then is, what if the eye, what if the door with yes on it was the correct door, but it still had simply been unintentional that the eyes would clue to that door?
Yeah, I
Because
would say it's valid still. I think what makes this different is that there is a concrete solution, right, which is simply the door number. You don't need to know why for the concrete solution, right? And it's actually relatively easy to figure out the concrete solution. You can just, there's a limited number of choices in each room. You just trace them all and see which ones get you to the middle and then figure it out. You can map it out like you did, whatever. And then the rest, so there's kind of like bones, right? There's a structure that you can just kind of build off of. And I think as long as you stick to that structure, it's really hard to have like a wrong solution as long as you believe it. Though we've kind of been working with solutions that kind of you can convince someone else with, I guess, a little bit.
yeah, I mean,
But that's kind of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just kind of mutter and mumble some more. I mean, I struggle. The ordinary idea of what's a correct or valid or invalid solution to the puzzle, I just don't even. I don't even know that it matters to put a label on that stuff. I don't know what it means. I guess I'd say what we're looking for are interesting things in the book, interesting connections, like what we just talked about in room one with the uncertainty of visitors there, and then the repetition of the phrase. Um, he calls them uncertain visitors in room 24, and
Right.
that's an interesting connection that doesn't relate to any puzzle. It's not a solution to anything, but it's just as interesting as anything that tells us what the right door is, because what we're really just trying to figure out with everything in the book is what's going on with this, why is this here like that?
Yeah.
And so
I
from
think,
that perspective, if you've got something interesting that points out the right door in a way that is by all appearances intentional, does it matter if Manson comes out and says, "Oh, I never even thought of that. Never even put that together"? Like, let's say if Manson came out and said, "Oh, the uncertainty of visitors," and I never even thought of that. I just wrote those two sections, didn't even think about it. Boy, that is really neat. Um, does that really detract from that discovery? Certainly in that case, I'd say not, because I think that's more of an aesthetic connection than a puzzle connection. It's just kind of tells you something about the guide and kind of the nature of the maze and what this game is like. And so whether Manson thought of that or not, I mean that those elements are still there.
let me ask you a question, and maybe your answer will be instructive, maybe it won't. But you're a novelist, correct? Um,
Sort of.
in your book, is everything in your book completely understood to you? Do you know why everything in your book is there?
Oh, why it's there.
Or, like,
I would
I think
say
there's some thinking in your book that maybe your conscious mind wasn't necessarily aware of when you were writing it.
um, well, I'm trying to think there. Not really. It was pretty deliberately constructed. There would probably be things that I couldn't explain now because it's been so long since I wrote it that I wouldn't remember what was going on. Um, but it was pretty tightly, pretty deliberately constructed. I don't think there would be. I mean, it's possible, but my book is probably an unusual example in that case.
Uh-huh.
But I would probably think of my book more like the way I imagine Manson writing Maze and putting everything in there deliberately and having a reason for it.
And then maybe forgetting about it afterwards. So that really wasn't
Yeah,
the point I was thinking of
that's,
in my head, but I think that that could get us into the process right now. Like, it's like 20 years later. No, it's 30 years later, about,
mm,
since he made Maze. maybe even longer for some of the rooms, since there was, probably took him more than he didn't make it, and then it was published immediately, right? That took him a lot of time. So the chances of him like knowing everything, the whole process that he went through to make it is pretty slim, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Like he's made offhand comments before, like in response to Gentile, where he said, that he didn't intend to communicate a Christian message with Mays, and he said like there aren't really references to Christian mythology or whatever, just these couple offhand things. But then I don't think he mentioned all the different references that are in there to like because there's some Adam and Eve stuff in there that I don't think he remembered to mention. I can't remember now. Maybe there was some other stuff, but it seemed like, well, you forgot a few things there. But it's just because he was just offhandedly saying, no, there's not a bunch of Christian stuff in this book. I just put some stuff in there for puzzles or whatever. And so, yeah, that too. I think you got to take some things with a grain of salt.
And also, like Christianity is such like an ingrained part of the culture, right? Or Zoroastrianism, just the idea of like a direct good and evil. People will talk in these terms, even if they're not a Christian, for example, and they're very much they're coming from this viewpoint, this very Christian viewpoint, whether they know it or not.
Well, I think it's, Christian mythology is well known within his target audience, Americans. And so I think it finds its way in here only for that reason. The same reason that Greek mythology is in here, that, Woodrow Wilson.
It's there because that's the culture he's from. That's where he's speaking from.
Well, I don't think it's just that. Although it could be because he's got some obscure stuff in there too. But I think it's because he could count on his target audience to have some familiarity with that. His target audience, whatever their religious beliefs are, they're going to know who Adam and Eve are. Almost everyone's going to know the basic
his culture to his culture.
Yeah, everyone knows the dude with the pitchfork and the horns is the devil.
Yeah, you see the black thing and the white thing, and you see a nun.
Mm-hmm. Good God, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, we're just talking about what's a solution and what's not, and if, whether he meant something or not. Does that make a difference? Does it affect? Well, you'd still, if we had no contact with Manson, and we virtually don't. The only time we ever hear about anything that Manson confirmed is through White Raven. If we had no contact with him, it would essentially be a moot point. It would make no difference whether he confirmed, whether he meant something or not, because you're never going to know the difference. And so you would judge everything entirely upon how it appears and whether it appears to be deliberate or not. And I don't know whether it's better to get any kind of confirmation on that stuff or not. Like, which answer would you rather settle on? The answer that from Manson, here's what I was actually thinking, or the answer that sort of in the marketplace of ideas seems to be the best answer to the room?
Yeah,
I think from Manson's perspective and from our perspective, it would probably be preferable if people were settling on what was the apparent best solution,
Yeah, and I think in the responses, or the secondhand responses I've heard or read from him, that's sort of his idea. He's not thinking in terms of, find the dogma, find the,
Right, and Manson doesn't generally give information out about it either. He's talked to White Raven about it and he's confirmed some things for White Raven, and I think White Raven was repeatedly pestered until he said, all right, here's the things that Manson has confirmed. But like so much of this stuff, it's kind of it's almost like finding out what your Christmas presents are going to be or something. It's information that you clamor for, and then once you get it, it's like, well, man, maybe I just spoiled the fun by finding out,
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we didn't want to know what was confirmed and what wasn't.
That's a question I want to ask you. If you could go back, or not go back, but like use some science fiction device to erase all memory you have of Maze, except that it exists, and you still had, or maybe not that it exists, you have Maze sitting on your desk or whatever,
Mm.
and you erase all the solutions that you've learned and the reading you've done on the internet or whatever, would you do that?
Assuming that I couldn't just get right back on the internet and read the abyss.
Right. But maybe you put a note to yourself that says, "Don't do that." Um, would you
Well,
start? Would you want to experience Maze with fresh eyes?
the abyss would have to not exist for me to not look at it. I'll tell you that. Even I can sit here and
Love
tell you,
that.
I can sit here and tell you that if I had access to a novel-length tome from Christopher Manson where he explained everything that went into Maze, every thought that he had, and everything of it, after I read it, I would be interested in Maze for a period of days probably, and then put it aside and never look at it again. And so that would probably not be the best move for me to read that. To spoil the mystery of it probably would make Maze lose its appeal. But if you gave me that book, I would absolutely read it. I would not be able to not read it.
Right.
And if I lost everything I knew but could go back and read The Abyss again, I know I would do that. So the question, I guess, is if I couldn't do that, if I was
Yeah.
never going to
Good.
have access to these answers, um, I don't know whether I would have the wherewithal to do it. But I will say I think Maze held a more prominent place in my mind as a book that influenced me, that I would love to create something like it, that was unlike, it was such a, I think it was a more standout work to me when I knew virtually nothing about it. Because it was just like, Christopher Manson was like godlike to me with this book, and this book was just like something from another planet. And it was totally unfathomable. It was magical, and yeah, I could have felt that way about it till the day I died. But taking it apart and seeing some of the solutions, I mean, we do end up talking about needles and eyes, and we talk about extended cask of Amontillado solutions. I keep using the same things over and over, but even things just like counting table legs or counting nails in a picture on the wall or something like that. Some of I don't know that all that stuff's legit, but the suggestion that some of these solutions are those things, it's it's still very interesting to solve Maze, and it's very rewarding to figure stuff out. But it kind of takes Maze down off the pedestal that it was on, when all you could do was imagine. So
So would you do that? You want that on a pedestal, or do you want it in your hands?
I would not be able to go back. I don't think. I would be happier, but I couldn't go back. But then again, I mean, how often did I take Maze out and look at it before then? Like, Maze was always in the back of my mind, and it was something I would recommend to people all the time. And it was a huge influence on me in any creative works that I did, but I didn't look through Maze. So maybe I'd have this elevated opinion of Maze, but maybe I wouldn't really be getting that much enjoyment out of it.
Because it was
Whereas,
a pedestal, you couldn't really understand it.
right.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, if I had gotten it out and taken the problem was, like, I looked at it at three distinct stages. I looked at it once. I looked at it when I was a kid, like a little kid, and didn't figure anything out. Then I looked at it when I found John Bailey's site that had all the solutions on it, and then it was just like I read a bunch of solutions that other people had already come up with, and which were most of the things that I would have had a shot at figuring out on my own. And I read the riddle of the center of the maze and the riddle of the path and all that stuff, and it's like, oh, geez, You know, I never would have got that stuff, and if there are other puzzles in there like that, I'm never going to get it. So I looked at it and I thought about it a little bit, but I didn't really put any serious effort into solving it at that point. And so it wasn't until this time that I really started taking a hard look at it. And I can't remember what my point was when I started out talking about that. Well, it's just about, you know, if it hadn't been for the Abyss, would I have ever been able to take a hard look at it and solve anything, regardless of whether anyone was handing me solutions? I mean, I when I took it out again and looked at it most recently, this last time, you know, however many months ago, yeah, I was seeing stuff that I did not see before that was legit stuff. But that's just a consequence of getting older and having done a lot more puzzly stuff, having played more puzzle games and been exposed to a wider variety of puzzles. I mean, I was still, you know, 18, 19 years old when I found the John Bailey site. So, I mean, I was old enough that I could start understanding and solving the puzzles of Maze, but I was not hugely into puzzles. I didn't have a lot of puzzle experience. So, like, I'm trying to, like, when I was first reading Maze, I don't think I even knew what the word anagram was. And then I knew what an anagram was by the second time, but it's not like I'd spent a lot of time playing around with anagrams, you know, something like C, ape nose. Well, I look at that, and I was like, man, there's so many things that could have been. It could have just been pointing to an ape. It could have been pointing to a gorilla or a chimp. It could have been pointing to the chimp's face. To look at that and be able to see ape nose on, you can scramble that around to get no escape. You know, I think that's a pretty impressive solution that doesn't get as much credit as it should just because it's been around forever. But anyway, look at something like that. I wasn't gonna get no escape at that point in my life. So let's imagine something would have had to spark me. Something would have had to spark me to say, there are puzzles in this book that you can solve. You should take a look at it. And actually, though, it was not the Abyss that first sparked me to take a look at it again. It was this other series of podcasts that I do, other series of hangouts on air. I don't know whether you've even heard about these things before that we call Suggestcast, where
I have.
Okay, where we suggest.
Either.
What's that? Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, if you don't have time for this, you don't have time for that. But I suggested to other people that they look at Maze, and so when they were looking at Maze, then I started looking at Maze, and then, you know, we started trying to solve stuff again. And it was after we started doing that that I Googled Maze to see if there had been any developments, and I found the Abyss, and that's when shit got serious. It's when yeah, that's when we all got in contact with each other and started making a real effort here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think my own experience with it, I look at it a lot by myself, but I think I probably still wouldn't be looking at it to the degree that I am now if there wasn't other people to talk to about it. The book is oftentimes a solitary experience, but I think it's through the discussion that it sticks.
Well, that plus it just increases the chances that you're actually going to find new solutions and things. I mean, once you stagnate for a while, it's easy to kind of want to walk away. And to be honest with you, I think that's kind of what's happening with our group and with the Abyss in general right now. Although I shouldn't say that about the Abyss in general, because there are a lot of new people coming on there that I hope are going to kind of come in with some new ideas and start building off some stuff. But I think the regular crew of Maze casters here we're kind of feeling like where we've kind of hit the bottom of the barrel as far as stuff that we're figuring out. We're not getting the solutions like we used to. We kind of came out swinging and we're solving stuff left and right there for a short period of time, for a couple months probably. But now that that well's kind of run dry and we're scrambling to come up with anything, then it's hard to put as much time into it,
Yeah. Well, I think that's a natural progression for things. I mean, when you start something, you got more enthusiasm. But I don't feel like it's dry at all. Personally, this is my personal experience. It's true I don't have that much time, but
I
I
feel
think
like I'm a little dry in the sense that I don't. I need some inspiration from other people or some interaction with other people to make me see things. Like tonight, we were talking about Room 1, and
yeah,
we saw things we never saw before.
yeah. On air, there were things I had never seen before. I even studied ahead of time. So I think
Well, I didn't really, but boy, we've all studied Room 1 a heck of a lot. Um, there needs to be that interaction, but even then, like Alex and I, we talk a lot throughout the day, throughout the week. So when it comes to us bouncing ideas off of each other, that's where we've kind of already done that.
yeah.
So you're not in as constant of contact as Alex and I. Well, really, no one is. Alex and I are, for whatever reason, we just seem to never have anything to do. We're always talking in the Google Hangout. Um,
I think it's because you have phones. I don't have a phone.
oh yeah, that'll do it. But anyway, that's why there's a lot of good discussion about Room 13 on the Abyss.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I know.
No, actually, I do know. I read what you and Alex chat about. I've noticed you've been talking about 13.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could get like Kon Tiki, who's one of the guys. Well, I say guy. I guess I don't really know that Kon Tiki's a guy. One of the people on the Abyss who was posting some stuff there.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice if we could get somebody who's been having some input on Room 13 to join a podcast and maybe do a Room 13 episode.
Yeah.
But not everybody's that inclined to get involved with the podcast here.
You could let them know that they don't have to. They could just be a voice. They don't have to show their face.
Oh, yeah, well.
That might help. Some people don't want to be seen. They'd rather be, some people don't even want to be heard, but that's an easier barrier to cross than having your full face and voice out there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I actually have to go. I had an appointment at 9:30 Pacific time, and this ended up being a rather long discussion, but I think it was a very full discussion. I don't think there was less dead space than usual, and I think part of that is maybe because it was one-on-one, so we didn't have to worry so much about interrupting. Like when we have a lot of people, I feel like it's easy to talk over someone or cut out. So, but it was very good. Great job, Vance.
Well, thank you. Good job.
High five.
It was a very enjoyable podcast. I hope it was enjoyable for our audience as well. I did high five you. You couldn't see it because your own hand was in there.
No, my hand was just over the lens. I could see it.
Oh, that I guess makes complete sense. The same way that I could see it.
My head isn't that big. It didn't cover the whole screen.
All right. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do next time, some other time when everyone else is here. Thanks a lot for continuing to watch.
Thanks for watching all of this.
We'll see you next time.